Let's add one final feature to the session to make our players' traversal through the town complete, a cartoon dust cloud effect that trails behind them when they run. So we're going to need a new asset here, and I'm going to put it in the Sprites group under Player. If you're in Windows, you can go to File Explorer. If you're on the Mac, you can go to Finder, but go to the Assets folder that came with this tutorial. Go to Sprites, Characters and Items, and there'll be that one big dust cloud effect called SPR_dust. You can drag that asset into your player subgroup. Now GameMaker Studio 2 has opened this already for me. If it hasn't for you, then just double click it to open it. And all we need to do here is change the origin point. We want to put that in the middle center. We can go ahead and close that. And now what we're going to do is create the actual object for the dust cloud and go from there. So I'm going to put this in objects. So I'm going to right click on the objects group in the asset browser, choose create, and choose object. And we're going to rename this obj_dust. Where it says no sprite, let's click and choose that new sprite asset that we just imported. And we're going to need an event for this. So click add event and choose create. We just need to include a few basic variables, which I'm just going to paste in, but I'm just going to put a description here so I can keep track. So let me explain these variables here. Image X scale we've used before. When we were in our room and we were adjusting the scale or flipping the different objects in here manually, we were using the image X scale and Y scale to do so. This is just the code variation of it, and you can see it's a built-in variable. So what we're doing here is we're setting the image X scale to a random range. This is a built-in function in GameMaker Studio 2, and you just need two arguments, a beginning range and an ending range. So anywhere between 0.8 and 1.2, it's going to choose a random number, and we'll apply that to the X scale. So if we wanted to only choose integers or whole numbers, we could turn this into iRandom range, but that's not what we want. We want it to be able to use decimals, so we're keeping it at random range. Now in the next line, all we're doing is setting the Y scale, so the vertical scale of this, to be the exact same thing as the X scale, just so we don't get any weird distortion. And these next three variables are all doing the same thing. We've got rot speed, which we're going to use for rotation, fade speed, and drift speed. And they've all been set to apply a random range to them. Now, I've just chosen these numbers because I think they look best, but you can play around with these and do whatever you want. The idea is that when one of these dust clouds appear, we don't want them all to look exactly the same. We want them to have a slightly different rotation speed, a slightly different fade out speed, and a slightly different drift speed where it sort of wafts up from the ground. And by having a range, it'll look a little bit more natural. Next, let's add a step event to our dust object. So I'll go to add event, step, and just the regular step event. I'll just give this a quick description. And we're going to add a code block here for rotating the cloud. So we want the cloud to sort of have this gentle rotation as it floats up after it appears. And we're going to use another built-in variable called image angle, which is exactly as it sounds. Now what we're going to do is have it say plus equals rot speed, which means for every frame that this object exists, it will add whatever rot speed is to its image angle. So it will rotate in a particular direction. If you want the rotation to be reversed, you can always change that to minus equals rot speed, but I'll let you play around with that. Next, we want to change the vertical orientation of the cloud, or sort of the height, and we're going to use a very simple expression, y minus equals drift speed. So what I'm calling the drift is the speed at which the cloud rises up from the ground after it appears. So the y value of the cloud will be reduced every frame by whatever drift speed is. Let's add another code block here, and we'll call it fade out. And I'm going to add an if statement. If image alpha is greater than 0. And in here, we'll do something we've done before. Image alpha minus equals fade speed. So as long as image alpha, or the transparency of the dust cloud, is greater than 0, it will reduce its alpha or increase its transparency by whatever fade speed is. We've used this in other objects as well. Now, we haven't set image alpha anywhere else. By default, it'll always be set to 1. So we'll add another line here. If image alpha lesser than or equals to 0, and in here, I'm going to type instance destroy. We've used instance destroy before. So if the transparency is complete, if the dust cloud is completely transparent, then it will destroy itself because we no longer need it. Now, why did I use lesser than or equals to? Well, fade speed is going to be set as a random number, and we can't always predict how this is going to work. It may actually decrease in such a way that it will kind of go below 0. At least that's what I'm worried about. So just to be safe, I put that.